Hello. So welcome to Unit 9. So today's notes are going to focus on the learning target. I can simplify radical expressions using the addition, subtraction, and multiplication properties of radicals. So today we're focusing on adding and subtracting, which is new for us. So the first thing I want you to do is a quick warm-up. I'd like you to try problems 1, 2, and 3. Pause the video, try them, and unpause to check your solutions. So you can check your solutions for 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to focus on 4, 5, and 6, which is going to frame our learning for today. So the first one is we want to know, does square root of 5 plus square root of 5 equal square root of 10? So if we type each of these into our calculator, we're going to check and match the decimal approximations. So if I type square root of 5 plus square root of 5 in my calculator, I get approximately 4.47. Okay, and I want to know, does it equal square root of 10? So when I type square root of 10 in, I get 3.16. So are those equivalent? Absolutely not. So let's try the next one. Does square root of 4 plus square root of 9 equal square root of 13? Meaning, does 5 equal square root of 13? Absolutely not. Okay, and let's try the next one. Does 2 plus 4 square root 3, which I calculated in my calculator to be 8.93. Does that equal 6 square root 3? And I get 10.39, which again is not true. So this leads us to some new properties for adding and subtracting radicals. So what I want you to see is that if I have square root of 5 plus square root of 5, I'm not adding the numbers underneath the radical. And instead, what's going to happen is if I have 1 root 5 plus 1 root 5, what we're going to learn is we're going to add the coefficients out front. And so that's going to equal 2 root 5. So if I check 2 root 5 in my calculator, what do you know? That's also approximately 4.47. which is exactly what we want. So to frame the new learning, we're going to go to the next slide. So the big question for this day is, how do I add or subtract radical expressions? And so we have 2 steps we're always going to follow. The first step is we're going to simplify each radical. Okay, and the second step is we're going to combine like terms. And what that means is we're going to add, we'll say add or subtract the coefficients of each radical. Okay, so the big idea is we can only sum terms with a common radical because they're like terms. So for A, I have 4 root 5 plus, and remember there's a coefficient of 1 in front. And so first thing we're going to do is, can I simplify each radical? And I know I cannot simplify square root of 5. So step 1 is done. So now we're going to combine our like terms. So what we're going to focus on is our coefficients out front. 4 plus 1 is 5. And then the radical stays the same. So it's going to be 5 root 5. Just as if, I'll go back to some polynomials, if I had 4x plus 1x, right, if we were to combine those, we would get a 5x. Notice the x did not change. Same idea with radicals. The radical doesn't change. It just means they're like terms, and we can combine the coefficients together. So for example, the next one, for B, I have 1 root 10 minus 4 root 10. I cannot simplify the radicals any further. So I'm going to focus on my coefficients. 1 minus 4 is negative 3. So we're going to get negative 3. Radical does not change. Square root of 10. For C, I notice on square root of 12 plus 7 root 3, I do have to simplify the square root of 12. So we're going to go back and use our previous skills. We're going to do a little work off to the side. So the first thing we need to do is figure out what square root of 12 simplifies to. And we know, hopefully we should feel good about this, it can be rewritten and simplified to 2 root 3. So now I have 2 root 3 plus 7 root 3. Okay, now I have the same radical, so I'm going to combine my like terms. So I'm going to look at my coefficients of 2 and 7. Again, I have the same radical, so I can combine those. And so we're going to get 2 plus 7 is 9. So I get 9 root 3 as my final answer. And looking at D, I notice, so square root of 7, I can't simplify. Square root of 14, I cannot simplify. So what I want to do is I want to add my like term. So I can only combine these two terms, the first two, because they have a radical 7. And so I'm going to combine those together. So 8 plus 7 is 15. My radical does not change. And then 2 root 14 is going to stay just as it was because, again, we have to have the same radicals. So square root of 7 and square root of 14 are different radicals. It's like different variables. So we cannot simplify any further. So this would be my final step. I do just want to show you, it's similar to me saying 8x plus 7x plus 2y. These we can combine, 15x plus 2y, but again, I would never combine the 15x and 2y because they're not like terms because they have different variables. So again, this is how we add or subtract. Again, these are my final terms. So what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video and try the remaining and then check your solutions. I'm going to go back to the first slide. So how do you add and subtract? Step 1 is we're always going to simplify each radical first. Second of all, you're then going to combine like terms by adding or subtracting the coefficients of each like radical. And that's it. When you're ready, you can get started on the homework. Okay, so you can check your solution. So for E, I got 11 root 2. For F, I got negative 3 root 2. G, I got 7 square root 7. And H, I got 6 minus 10 root 2. Don't forget, you can only sum terms with a common radical, so that's why I could not combine the 6 and the negative 10 root 2. The last thing I want to talk about is you can double check your answer on your calculator. So if you wanted to, I'm just going to create a new screen here of today. You could look at the original problem. So I'm just going to use the last one for example. Oops, didn't mean to do that. I have square root of 36 minus square root of 200. So if you want, you can type this into your calculator exactly as you see it. When you type into calc, and I got, negative 8.14 is the approximate. Obviously, the exact is square root of 36 minus square root of 200. And then we want to show the simplified version, which we figured out to be 6 minus 10 root 2, and double check that that matches. So again, you're going to type it into your calc. Again, you're doing this on the home screen, and again, when I do this, I got negative 8.14. So you can type the original right here and your simplified solution, and they should have the same decimal approximation. So that's one way you know you did it correctly. So for example, if you did this and you went one step further and you thought it would simplify to negative 4 root 2, when I type that into my calculator, I get negative 5.66, which we know does not match that, so that would tell me that I did it wrong. So that's the main idea.